Or I could just start with the "she's passionate" line.
Hi, I'm Rusty. Everybody, welcome back to the after show Convo. We're going to pick up where we left off with Peter and Christine.
She's passionate about helping empower others to shift their perspective so that they can embrace a more expansive way of living.
Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by
wearehistorically.com, Conscious Brand Apparel, and
Learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
Let's meet Christine.
I guess I'm kind of curious in your perspective of this Great Awakening, as it's been called, how do you feel, quote unquote, normies are going to handle a lot of these things when they get revealed? Like that's one of the reasons why I feel like the call to activation has been so strong for a lot of healers, because I feel if there's a wave coming, of just people that are going to be very lost.
Yeah. I think that one of the reasons why some of us have awakened earlier, I know that there have been some people who've been awakened to some of these truths for a very long time, but I think that there's like this wave of healers, as you say, who've awakened to aspects of this, and it gets really, really dark from what I understand and my deep sense of knowingness. We've had to process our reactions to it in advance of it becoming more obvious and clearer. And it's hard to know when and how some of these things are going to be, illuminated for the masses. But it feels like sooner rather than later, in the next couple of years, at least for some of these. And I'm at a loss because I don't understand how to deal with cognitive dissonance. I've been so frustrated having all sorts of scientific knowledge and putting it in front of people and having them say, oh yeah, and then but it doesn't sink in, or that can't be true, because I believe in science or something like that. And it's like, wait a minute, it's like there's such attachment to beliefs that they're not willing to even consider the possibility that they're not true. And when they see some of the horrific stuff that may unfold, I don't know what's going to happen to them, Peter. I know that we're here to support them. And I know that there's going to be a lot of loss, and there's going to be probably some rude awakenings that are they're so huge that it's probably going to be like a slap in the face to get people out of the trance. But I think that there are going to be people who have such issues that they won't be able to process it. They won't be able to function. I think that there are going to be a lot of people who on a soul level are going to be choosing to exit, partly because they can't handle it, but partly because they're going to be playing the role of creating this new world of new beliefs, of greater unity, and that and the losses are going to be huge for people, and so it's hard to know, and I really can't predict, and yet I have this deep sense that this Great Awakening is coming with some really dark truth.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I feel that, and it's sad, but again, got to bring it back to the knowings, where it's just everything is grace. It's going to provide a learning opportunity and opportunity to really take a step forward as a people. And I guess that's kind of my hopium to pitch to the listeners is, don't lose hope, in the sense of everyone has their own path. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, is the embracing, the acceptance, the surrender, the letting go, whatever you want to identify it as, but that willingness just to allow life to play its part and you just to dance through it.
And
it's rough.
And I think that's a very powerful thing, Peter, that it's this, that allowing puts us in alignment with what is, which is the launching point. We could only get there from here on an energetic level. And I talk about this in my course called The Vibration of Change, which is up on the Academy of Divine Knowledge right now, but I've taught it in person as well, in day-long workshops. It's this moment, this energetic connection to what is the launching point of everything. And the only way we can get there, wherever the there is we want to go, is from here. And energetically, we tend to be over here. So, you know, if we can align with what is, including the horrific truths that we may get exposed to, the control, the manipulation, whatever it is, then that is a very potent co-creative spot to come from. So the hope for me comes with being in that alignment with that truth that's existed on many levels for, you know, hundreds of years, and, you know, I don't know how many centuries, thousands of years. But it's coming into alignment with that on an energetic level means accepting the truth. And that is a very powerful launching point.
Ooh, I love that. And I guess that's the one thing is, what are the biggest resistance points that you see for people in that acceptance of truth and, you know, from your own healing experiences?
Oh gosh, I think that on a psycho-spiritual level, it feels like most people are stuck about age 6 or 7 developmentally, like wanting to please authorities, wanting to be good little girls and boys, wanting to buy into what the authority figures are telling them because they're having to play the game, you know, of school or whatever, you know, family life, whatever it is. So the question is, how do we individuate? Because that's really what this is about. I know that we're going towards oneness, but an essential part of the process of coming to oneness is to individuate on a psycho-spiritual level. And I think that part of it is going to be getting exposed to the truth that the authority figures have been lying about various things, have been controlling us in a variety of ways. And part of it's just going to be like on a soul level, people's inner yearning, like, you know, okay, so I've gotten the you know what, and I'm feeling off, or I've tried to be a good citizen and stay in my home and, you know, cover my face, and I'm feeling more disconnected than ever. That inner imbalance that creates that proverbial carrot to bring us forward into deeper connection with soul, which of course is also a deeper connection to truth, may lead people out of that stage of being stuck in wanting to please the authority figures and wanting to believe the authority figures into this individuation of truth, of personal truth, of soul truth, of universal truth.
I love that. I love that. And it comes back to that breaking of the trance, you know, breaking up this programming. And, you know, I like to always akin it to, we have to squeeze out the sponge of our conditionings, you know, because when we're children, we soak it all up indiscriminately, you know, and that's almost going to be forced upon a lot of people the way I see it, where it's like, it's going to get squeezed and wrung out real quick. And that can be pretty traumatizing, but it's beautiful in the sense of embracing the what is, to use it as that point to catapult yourself forward. I really like that. And it comes back to that vibration of change. In your experience of it, how does one change, you know, if they see all these things happening, they're still kind of hesitant in this search. I know there's a willingness component, but how does life tend to support you once you do commit to this vibration of change? Like, what are some things to look for? What are things you can feel out?
Well, I think that, first of all, to get into it, you need to, you know, not be resisting, not be trying to control your own direction, control the direction of the world. Boy, it's tempting at times, you know, because we know what we want, right? But when you're in alignment with now, have some ease around it, even if it means you're in the middle of grieving, you know, the loss of a relationship, or you're grieving the fact that your belief system was merely an illusion, or you're grieving because you've chosen to leave a job because it's not in alignment with who you are, you know, whatever it is, whether you're focused on the moment of something pleasant or focused on the moment of something that you need to process that's really feels awful, that focusing on the moment, it means that you're in alignment with the launching point, right? And being in that vibration of change is kind of like, you know it when you feel it. You're just, there's this release, this surrender, this physical ease. It's a difference between like having tightness in your solar plexus and feeling sort of a tingly, relaxed ease, which you can feel even if you're exercising, like if you're moving up hiking up that trail and it feels tough, and then finally you're in that flow and you feel this connection, you can be at ease. It's like this, I think of it as a vibrational ease that connects us to the here and now. And that really is the place of change. That's the place where you're greasing the wheels of positive change.
I love that. So in terms of the Academy of Divine Knowledge, how else are you greasing people's spiritual wheels?
Well, I have weekly conversations on my radio show on Fridays, and I'm trying to wake people up within the community one-on-one. And, I belong to certain groups, including on Telegram. It's a great place to go if you want to. It's kind of like social media without the censorship. And I'm still trying to find my way. I feel like I spent a good deal of this past year processing my own stuff, like going to that next deep level of releasing more unworthiness stuff, releasing grief, releasing, coming to this place of kind of embracing the confusion and the not knowing. It's this complex but very simple process. The simple aspect of it is coming into the now. And it gets complex because it touches so many different aspects of our belief systems, how we function throughout the day, and our 3D reality of what we're choosing.
100%. I love that though, where it comes back to the riding the wave that life is presenting you and not choosing to resist it. And I think that the resistance component is always a very interesting one because, early on in my search, I learned, and, thankfully I had some nice trusted people I could listen to, but it was this, don't resist the resistance, dive into it, and that's where we can just jump into the unknown. And that's where we really enter the realm of discovery. So it's fascinating that, it's always really validating, again, touching with other people that are tapped into these concepts where it's like, okay, you're not alone, and I think that's always a big thing to reassure everyone, is that you're not alone. Like the outsider, that experience of being on the outskirts of, society's perception, you're never alone. There's other people that are taking this objective stance too. And I think that's when we can all really dive into this and embrace the chaos, as you put it. We could really enter into some profound discovery and just things that we didn't think would be liberated or gone. Things that, I think the one thing about this year that's really pushed is that it's brought up a lot of things to the forefront. It's really kind of jostled the bottle, and things have just popped where it's like, oh, I don't know if that would have without this type of tension and resistance. So like, oh, again, thank you. Everything is great.
Yeah.
So in your own experience, coming back to this kind of awakening to your powers as a healer, I'm very curious because you touched on your student on the table or your client on the table. When did you get into like Reiki healing and really using the energy of your own beingness to heal?
I've never done Reiki. I dabbled in a variety of things until I found my way to Reconnective Healing back in 2003, I guess it was.
Okay.
And it's funny because when I read Eric Pearl's book, I got this head to toe shiver that I had to go learn this work. And so I went and I learned it. On the first day of training, first full day of training, I felt like I was coming home in a really deep sense and knew that I had to do the work. And, within a couple of months, I'd, put up the proverbial shingle, and opened my own business in healing, and then went on to see Amazing Healings and became a part of the teaching staff and became one of three others besides him who taught this internationally. And we have lots of, we had lots of other teaching staff. And so it was like, I dabbled in some things, and all of a sudden when I was interacting with this energy, this light, it felt like home to me. Like it was a reminder, like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. And then I knew I was compelled to become a part of the teaching staff. And then ultimately, when the 111 activation came through, which was something that was channeled in, that's a whole other story, probably for another time. I knew that I was going to have to leave working for the Reconnection, even though I had this, it was a fabulous job. I got to teach thousands and got to travel and be with these amazing teams, and it was beautiful work. And yet the leader, he had a lot of attachment to there not being anything else that's relevant or useful, and that you were somehow, if you did something different, you were out of alignment. And I knew it not to be true. And so I knew I needed to leave. And since then, you know, other things have come through, but it's really a matter of having a relationship with our energetic being, which it sounds really nebulous, but once you start doing this energy work, you realize that, okay, this person has prickly energy and I don't know why, or that person has some sticky energy on him whenever he gets angry, or, you know, whatever it is, it's like you become more energetically aware. And then it's just the process of what unfolds, what downloads, how you shift as you interact with the 3D world, but also this quantum realm in this energetic, you know, way.
Okay, so I guess the next question that my mind goes to is this reconnective healing. What is the real difference between that and Reiki? Because I mean, I'm not experiencing either. So that's why I was like,
Right.
oh, I see hands, Reiki. Why not?
Yeah. And it's interesting because there are certain, like with reconnective healing, it's about interacting with this energy, which he calls light information. And I could see the light when I worked with it, or when I work with it. The approach is it's hands off, generally speaking, but it's about allowing and exploring and being curious and being in the present moment, and seeing how the person's reacting and kind of stretching things out, because the further you get away, if you've got that connection, the more the person's experience seems to increase. It's fascinating. And with Reiki, there are certain patterns. And in terms of the science, I got to be a subject of all sorts of scientific research at various universities in terms of my healing ability and evaluating reconnective healing. And they found that when working on damaged DNA, reconnective healing, it speeded up the healing process of damaged DNA. Whereas with Reiki, the healing process was slowed down. Don't know why. So we know scientifically there's some differences, and the approach was different. But it's the kind of thing where you're working in the light and, you know, creating this vibration of surrender, of allowing, of like just allowing the light to come through. And I think of the difference between some of the energy healing techniques such as Reiki. It's like you're sort of being a conduit. It comes down through you at your hands. Whereas with reconnective healing, it's about kind of hooking up that person to satellite, so to speak. So you're just kind of making the connection and allowing it to come directly to them instead of through you. And so it's less filtered, so to speak, and it's less draining for the practitioner. That's my take on it.
Wow. I love it. I love it. I always love new rabbit holes to explore after these things. So I guess that's the cool component here, where it's, again, you know, you're coming from this scientific community, this scientific upbringing perspective, now applying this very, what sounds like almost the mastering the kind of scientific protocols so people could really experience these deeper, profound spiritual knowings through this practice of your own healing and healing others. So what's kind of the next evolution of the healing of our beingness? Where do you see? Because I know you mentioned light. I know you're doing the reconnective healing. I'm just very curious.
Well, you know, I had done literally thousands of sessions over the years and taught thousands. And when I started going through my separation and divorce from somebody I was married to for a very long time, I began to sort of reevaluate. And I recognized that although I still do a few sessions, I didn't want to be doing sessions day in, day out. And I didn't want to be teaching people how to facilitate healing, because for me at this point, it's not that doesn't serve a really important purpose. For me, it's more about empowering people on a more philosophical and like a more energetic level, where it's not working with a specific energy, it's about connecting to this process of what's unfolding. And so for me, my passion more recently has been more about questioning belief systems. It's been about kind of doing the deep dives into this rabbit hole of, the Great Awakening, the 3D realm of what the Great Awakening is helping to illuminate. And kind of like writing my own wave. And I'm working on a book called The Top 20 Myths About Spirituality. And so again, that's sort of bucking against belief systems. But I'm here to serve, and it's weird because sometimes I just don't know exactly what my next step is besides those things. Yeah.
That's all you need, just the direction. Life will provide the road. So
yeah.
I think that's the beautiful component here, where it's being able to truly transcend your own understanding through living out the search. And that's so much what it sounds like in terms of this this kind of jarring experience we're all kind of cumulatively going through in this awakening, this unfoldment, this beliefs honestly shattering for most people, these structures and constructs and paradigms, and just how transformative it is for the perspective. It sounds like you're really kind of taking the reins. So it's cool.
I sometimes I know what I'm doing and other times I don't. And it's really about, like, as you're talking about, like riding that wave, sometimes it's just a matter of staying on the surfboard.
Oh, I understand that. So for yourself and really these next moves with the show, what are some of the next kind of big topics that you seek to really empower people with, other than the belief aspect?
Well,
or how are you going to keep breaking it?
It's interesting because so much of what I've done over the last 9 years with my show has been conversations about consciousness, spirituality, healing, health and well-being, as well as some of the science. I always like it when you've got that link between science and the more esoteric realm. But these days I seem to be really fascinated by illuminating certain truths. Clearly within the medical arena of what's unfolded, I saw that we were being lied to in a variety of ways, did a show on that, got taken down off of YouTube. I'm really interested in going down some of those rabbit holes and having conversations about those, because I think that what used to be thought of as just total craziness or conspiracy theories or whatever are actually really interesting rabbit holes to go down. And
right.
I'm sort of thinking that perhaps with my balance between the scientific and the more spiritual, the healing realm is a good place to be able to have balance when going down some of these rabbit holes. Checking out the rational information, tuning in with what feels right, what feels wrong, and then just bringing some of that to the world.
I love it. And again, it just brings credence to the knowing of the light workers and the healers are activated full force, where it's now time to shine a light into all this really just darkness and corruption that's been present for a long time. And I always try to reassure people where it's like, listen, it's not like this stuff is new. It's just the fact that that's just how much mass global support there is now, that these things are getting revealed, that these veils of illusion are getting dissolved, because people are finally ready in their hearts. And I always just try to remind people that, again, it sounds so cheesy, and I say it so many times, where it's like, really try to see everything as grace. It had to take something like this for people to really wake up to what is it they believe in, what is it they see. And I think that's kind of the dance that is life sometimes, where we have to be comfortable with that tension. We have to be comfortable with that, because it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be utilized for something negative. Like, again, think about angst and excitement. Anxiety and excitement are of the same feelings in the gut, just interpreted and completely differently interpreted. So it's just how we're going to really channel this energy and direct it, and to really put that tension into something where you're going to be illuminating more minds and masses. It's exciting, because I just love the way you perceive things. It's really cool to see that scientific background into full-on action in this esoteric realm. I love it.
And I think that the challenge for people right now who are who've been spiritual seekers, who are waking up to some of the truths that many of us had our eyes closed to until recently, at least certain ways. I mean, for a long time as an alternative healer, I knew that there was prejudice against it from conventional medicine. And I've had certain things, had certain thoughts about aspects of conventional medicine that we won't get into here. But, I had my mind blown open this past year. And I think that we as spiritual seekers have to get comfortable with transitioning from just sort of connecting up to that spiritual realm and make it all be about light and feel good energy into, bring it down into this dense 3D realm, bring that light down like a lightning rod, and then speak our truth, take action when we're inspired to take action. And, that's going to be required for us to create the reality we want to create on this planet.
100%. And I love that lightning rod aspect, because it just brings the knowing of fierce love. It's time to really bring out all the different aspects of love.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's fun. It really is awesome and encouraging to hear the motivation and drive you have towards this truth and helping others see it despite the adversity. And especially, again, like fellow Washingtonian, I understand the experience, especially out here. It's been so toxic just to say anything outside the norm. It's like, sorry.
Yes. Oh, and it's sorry. And what used to be my local community, I mean, I've had more of a global community for a long time, and in some ways, but the local community, it's like, oh, lost another one. Oh, they've bought, they drank the Kool-Aid, oh my gosh, yeah, it's really disturbing, I think. And when I find myself admiring places like Texas, which is I've got roots in myself, but it's not a place I've been drawn to. It's like, oh wow, that like eyes wide open and freedom sounds mighty good right now, But I also know that we need to bring that light of truth within this locale. It's a very powerful, energetic place that we live in. That and so I know that although I'm tempted to flee, there's actually real purpose in why I'm here.
Yeah, 100%. I love that though. Yeah, the temptation's been real. I'll leave that. But well, and again, I think what you said is the perfect word to express it. And it's been disturbing how attached people become to these beliefs and these emotions. And again, it's really the biggest component that I've seen has really been a manipulation of fear. And it's just having that power to question it, having that power to embrace it and understand that it's just another aspect, as you were mentioning earlier, where we have to kind of look at that. It's something within us that's showing us something. And that's the kind of thing where it's, if you embrace the fear and accept it, then you run down that rabbit hole of, yes, master, whatever you say, I'll do this and this, I'll join the ritual. And if you really question and be like, well, why am I fearing this? What is the ultimate goal here? Yeah. Then it becomes that transformative energy.
And Peter, I think that we have to be really self-aware about the fear, not just for our own fear, because sometimes where people have gone is, no, I'm being a responsible citizen. I don't want to kill grandma. I care about my community, therefore I'm going to do this. That's actually a version of fear as well. So we have to pay attention to making choices based on any fear. They may translate it into the word concern, but again, it's based on fear that we've been fed. And is that really in alignment with love? It gets twisted into love. And when you take a look you go down some of those rabbit holes of how the propaganda, the manipulation of the public's perception has been studied in great detail and in some big universities being funded by the government in order to control people's perceptions, that the fear has been twisted around so that if you don't really have fear for yourself, then you better be afraid for somebody else.
Mm.
And that's toxic too.
Yeah. Well, it's been very interesting just to see how fear has been turned into a virtue, in which if you are now not living and acting in the fear, you are somehow inhumane. You are somehow an enemy. And it's very brazen with how gross it's gotten in terms of people's manifestations and lashing out, that it's just kind of fascinating that it's like, you still haven't figured it out yet, huh? Like,
Yeah, and that's so eloquently said, so eloquently said. And yeah, and to have to let go of our attachment to being treated sensibly, reasonably by these people too, and to face the fact that on some levels we are separating from them. And that separateness, it's like this balancing act between unity consciousness and separation by energetic direction that we really have to balance out.
yeah, I like that. That's very interesting. And it's funny because there's now people that I have in my life who have gotten the jab, who are now reaching out to me, because I'm just gonna post. I've been censored on so many social media platforms, but I just keep doing it. Where it just, they're now messaging me, they're getting like texting, calling, and they're legitimately concerned now. And I think that's the most heartbreaking aspect, where it's like, where was that drive before you decided to do it? Where, I guess it just comes back to the lessons of we can only learn through experience. It's the highest form of knowing, right? So,
Yeah.
but and I think that's one of the cool things about this. I really do. I'm gonna research reconnective healing, because that's just like, oh yeah, I got this now. This is
Yeah.
interesting.
But
Because I guess this is the new realm of change and transformation that we're
and
going
it's
under.
really an approach to healing that's very powerful. But also understand that there's, within the context of being a practitioner, there's a lot of control, and there's a lot of things that are very valuable that they feel are inappropriate, from homeopathic, solutions to, other types of energy healing. But it is a very powerful and profound way to approach interacting with anybody, including with facing ourselves and interacting energetically with ourselves, as well as other people. So it's quite valuable. But I just want to say that there are aspects of it that no longer resonate with me. The approach to healing absolutely does, but there are aspects of the organization that do not.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things where this is a time where if people haven't yet, you got to use your own discernment, where it's always listen to what your heart is telling you, in the sense of the connections. Take everything with a grain of salt, learn what you can to make it your own. I think that's the most the important and empowering component about everything that we're learning here. And it's that you're meant to give your gift to the world. It's your gift. It's no one else's. It's not my gift, not your gift, not anybody's gift but your own. And this is the time where it's like each unique light can truly shine and fully illuminate everything. So I guess the one thing that I'm really kind of inclined to ask you, in this changing of perspective, how does one handle the turmoil of dealing with the grief and the loss of these belief systems breaking? What are these words of advice for people who are forcibly experiencing this now? Is how can they really transform that suffering into strength, that pain into power?
I think that the first thing we have to do when facing the grief is to let the grief lead us, to not try to get through the grief, because that is attachment. To embrace what is. I personally faced a whole lot of grief, October, November of this past year, for a variety of reasons. There were a lot of things coming up. And I felt like it was cleansing my heart chakra, essentially. And when you think about our manifestation engine is the heart, right? The energy of the heart chakra. We need that to be as clear as possible. It's kind of like if there are clogs there, and the clogs are there in the form of grief. It prevents us from it's kind of like merging up onto the freeway. If you've got clogged spark plugs, it's going to sputter. You're not going to move really fast. But if you've got clear spark plugs, you're just going to whoosh up to high speed and be able to merge really well, really fast. So it's clearing out the heart. So embracing the grief
Mm.
because it's there, trusting in it. Yes, letting it consume you if that's what it does, but have some support through the process. And understand that it's only when you get to the other side, and you can't know when that's going to be, that you've really tapped into the power of co-creating in a bigger way.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that resonates. And it's funny because that is definitely the experience of a lot of people who have received these things and now are questioning their decisions, where it's this acceptance, and we really do have to embrace what is on all wavelengths and fronts and energies we receive, because it's gonna keep building.
Yeah, and I think it pays to go down some of these rabbit holes. For instance, on Telegram and on the Academy of Divine Knowledge that my censored interview is going to be up there in July. But I've presented some things up there as well. The uncensored places are really good places to go down those rational-based rabbit holes and learn some of the things, including what some of these virologists, researchers, and doctors are saying may be helpful in dealing with the after effects, the side effects, the unwanted effects of the jab. So make sure you avail yourself to this information, because you're not going to find it on Facebook. You're not going to find it on
Yes.
Twitter. You're not going to find it on YouTube for very long, typically, unless we're sort of like, skating around it here or there. Just understand that it's so censored because it is so powerfully true that you're going to have to look elsewhere to get that information. But that information is going to become very important.
Oh, yeah. And it's going to be almost as I see it, and it's just this kind of vibe that I get from it, where this and the remedies that are going to be used and have been suggested by other physicians and virologists, it's kind of bringing back that bridge to the ancient knowledge. And I find that that's always a fascinating thing, where, it's bringing us back to the Ayurvedic medicine. It's bringing us back to all these different components of natural healing, really utilizing our own energy as that source and generator of creation we are, to really manifest and change our own inner space, to uplift this dense light body.
Yeah, and when you're energetically and intuitively connected, when you get exposed to like information about a certain supplement or whatever, you'll know whether, regardless of whether they say this is what you should do, you'll know whether you're supposed to take it or not. Like that's in alignment with my body. I can feel vibrationally that is something that I need. And that same thing is true for people who are choosing not to go that path, because first of all, we have to keep our immune systems up in general. And secondly, interacting with those who have that energy coming off of them, which, some say was by design, whether you believe in that or not, it is what it is. And we're getting exposed to it. So, you can either choose not to interact with those people. And for me, I'm trusting that people I love, I will hug. And in terms of interacting with others, I will do what I need to do to get through my day. And if it feels right, I will do it, including hugging. But I'm also trusting my gut when it says stand farther back, or, create a sort of a vibrational shield right now because it's needed. And sometimes after interacting with certain people, I feel like the need for certain supplements and certain energy work.
Yeah, 100%. I resonate with that entirely. And since my experience of dealing with it, there's been some changes to my routine where but again, it just comes to that personal protection. It comes to understanding the things you're going to be exposed to. And that is probably one of the most important things now. I feel this is also revealing, is that people need to take their health and, on all wavelengths and forms and components into their own hands. That, and we kind of always should have been doing that, but sometimes it takes a pandemic to get that forced upon people's forefront.
And I think it's also helpful to know that, I'm thinking in terms of the stuff that's come out of the skies, the stuff that comes out of the needles, the stuff that's in some of the foods. I mean, it's by design or not, a lot of it's toxic. And even if there are people who wish us to be ill or die or be financially connected, to their system forever. We have to understand that with that negative energy, that control, comes this realization that they wouldn't have to jump through these hoops if they were so all powerful, and that we have a whole lot of power. And as long as we stay in alignment and recognize that not only are we worthy, but we are powerful beings, that we can shift this planet.
So quick too, because the power of manifestation, once your heart is to it, it just, if you're aware of it, the life instantly starts to have these things gravitate towards you, these networks, these connections, these pathways. So I think I'm so hopeful, and it's not just through this conversation. It's just this, although it has definitely added some strikes to the hopium aspects to it, but it's just this knowing of, we are immensely powerful gods and goddesses of creation. We truly are tapping into this opportunity to awaken fully to the power of mass consciousness, aligning itself with a certain truth, with progress, with really disclosure, with everything that's going to start getting revealed to us. This is what everyone's heart setting themselves to. And I like how you put that, the fact that they're having to jump through all these hoops means that it's already loosened quickly too.
Yeah. And we don't need the whole population to be light workers to change it too, because that's how powerful we are. Small percentage will do it.
Yeah. And I think that's when people try to quantify it. It's like, it's always tough when you got billions of people, but it's a lot less than we think. With all this is where it comes back to the scientific aspect, where the quantitative data on meditation experiments is so profound, where a few hundred people, a few dozen people, and obviously when it gets to the thousands, it's pretty intense, but the fact of being able to have peace treaties manifest, that crime drops to levels where it should never drop, like there is so much stuff that we still haven't tapped into, where I'm really excited just to see what's next.
And I think of it as kind of like the 100th monkey. And the 100th monkey, that's like consciousness turned into behavior. But without going deep into this rabbit hole, I think of things as we have vibrational patterns, each of us. And they're vibrational patterns of the earth. And she is desperately wanting to change to this illuminated, loving place where nature is respected and we live in balance. But I feel like if enough of us shift our vibrational patterns, then it's kind of like it's the 100th monkey kind of thing. Then it begins to shift the patterns of many, which shifts consciousness, which shifts behavior, and ultimately shifts the planet.
But it's funny because there's just that subtle vibrational shift from even walking around without one of these and smiling at people. I've noticed such a profound release, even just energetically, or people just wanting to talk and engage more. And whether it's the confidence some of them have with this or not, I mean, most of them still wear their stuff. But I've just found that even just being more open and loving and completely dismissing the narratives of what's getting projected upon us has been so powerful for those just in the sphere of influence. That it's really inspiring just to know that, like, oh yeah, like one spark can create a wildfire of change.
Yeah. And it teaches people that they don't need to be afraid. If we're not afraid, they don't need to be afraid.
I love that. Now, I'm very inspired to ask you, are there any other experiments that you've been a part of that have kind of showed the powerful impacts that these esoteric practices have revealed?
Well, first of all, I've been a subject of a whole bunch of different experiments, from shifting extremely low frequency vibration to healing damaged DNA in this big machine, to looking at how it affects the light in people's energy field, or self-healing, how it affects the energy field. And there was one situation, I've been meaning to do a YouTube video about this because I think this is a really important thing. When I was first a subject of scientific research with Konstantin Korotkov. He's this energy medicine researcher from Russia, St. Petersburg University, although I know that they've changed the name of the university. I don't remember what it's called, but he had this device. At the time, it was, you had to put like your one fingertip at a time, and it would measure the electrophotons, and it would translate that into the aura. The biofield is what scientists call that. And I knew that there were devices that could actually measure the light, and they were much more expensive devices, and people could go into them or could put your hand in them. But this is one where I was going to be evaluated, and they wanted me to turn my hands off, which as a healer, you're never fully off, but then turn your hands on. So really engage with the healing energy, but they wanted to see the before and after. So I'm thinking, okay, former research statistician, I'm a bit skeptical of the technology, but I'll go play because it's interesting. And so I saw my before and after. My before, my energy field was a little thinner. There was one area sort of to the outside of one of my thighs, my right thigh, where it was like this big gaping hole. And my chakras were, somewhat small, not all of them centrally located. And then after, when my hands were on, my energy field got to be much bigger. That big hole in my hip area had filled in. My various chakras were much larger, much rounder, all centrally located. And I thought, well, that's interesting. But what was really going on with my hip there, the side of my thigh? Like, that doesn't make sense. And then afterwards, I realized, oh, I had cargo pants on. There was a cargo pants pocket on where I had slipped my cell phone. And so the before, with my hands turned off, the cell phone was creating this big gaping hole in my vibrational field. And when my hands were turned on, it had filled it in. And I thought, well, okay, so it kind of convinced me maybe there's something to this technology. And there are a lot of practitioners around the world who use this technology now, and it's got to be more sophisticated. I think you only have to put 2 thumbs in, and that's it. But you can actually diagnose somebody based on the mapping that they create of what exactly is going on with the person's health. But it also taught me that, all these spiritual teachers just said, we can shift our vibration, okay, so they bring in this many G, I won't say it because maybe that's going to get flagged too. And it, has its detrimental effects. And I'm thinking, if by, this is like a decade ago where I shifted my vibration just by sort of being on and being connected to the energy field and the light, fills in my, the gaping hole that my mobile phone created. Well, maybe if we're conscious enough and focus on interacting with the light and being present with what is, that we can mitigate some of that energy.
Yeah, 100%. And the DNA aspect too, like just to me, it really resonates because this past, I'd probably say like 2.5 years, I've become more sensitive to like the EMF frequencies, whatever you want to call it. And my phone used to never connect to like the 5G that is like in the router. And randomly it would start to connect to that part of the modem. It would just be like the same name with like a 103 on it. And I used to be able to really feel it like almost instantaneously in my hand, where it would start to like my energy would start to feel like tingly and kind of like numb after a little bit. And I would experience it with the GPS thing, the same concept where I go into a client, forgot it in my pocket, forgot I had the GPS on getting to their place. And then like, I'm like 5 minutes in, I'm like, oh, my side like really hurts. And I was just like, oh, my phone, turn it off. And it's funny because I don't feel it when I meditate. And it's a different thing when I like allow myself to be grounded and centered, where it is activating that light, as you say, where it does mitigate things. This is coming from someone who's EMF sensitive, who understands it, who feels it like, yeah, it really is powerful what we ourselves can do. And that's the component of mind over matter, where once we really start to tap into the abilities we have, I mean, that's like textbook superhuman. In terms of the powers of creation and healing that we're really able, and the potential that we have within us. It's fascinating stuff.
It is. And we are electromagnetic beings, and there are ways of affecting both the electrical part of ourselves and the magnetic part of ourselves. And the connecting with the earth can help with both. Connecting with the higher frequency vibrational realm of healing through meditation, through consciousness of, being connected to the quantum field, can affect both. But there are things in place that are meant to mess with our magnetism. They're meant to mess with the electrical part of our system. Either, and they do, and some of them I think are by design, and some of them are just sort of like, well, it's just happens because of technology, and if we want the high tech, then we end up having some of these bad side effects.
And see, that's the kind of the issue is, it's very much so the path of the Borg, union with technology versus the spiritual unfoldment where we no longer need technologies because we recognize everything we really want we have within us. And it comes back to that point of the kind of poisoning and the toxicity that we're experiencing from every aspect of our environment, where I don't know if you've seen it recently, where there's now all this building evidence for the different pharmaceutical drugs that they are putting in animals for the food, where it's now they're actually becoming magnetized with their whatever nanoparticles they're using. But it's fascinating seeing just like regular spoons and things, just like literally sticking to like a package of chicken or beef.
I know. And the thing is, it's not just through the foods or through the jabs, it's also through the air. I've heard some interesting interviews about that and how these can end up inside of us. So it's it's a matter of being very conscientious about what we put into ourselves, and food is part of that, water's another part, belief, and the energetics that we invite into ourselves.
I love it. So I don't know, like, just to kind of clarify, because I don't know if some of the listeners where their mind goes to, this is water in my copper cup, by the way, folks. This isn't like a Moscow Mule. I'm so I don't do any of that stuff, but it's one of the
I'm
things.
a two-faced drinker. I've got water here and I've got leftover coffee here.
Love it. Well, one of the experiments that I've been doing, and I kind of do a little blind placebo test for people, just so like there's no, it's a double-blind, randomized, controlled study here that I do in my household, where I'll give someone a little glass of just regular like distilled water or filtered water, and I'll just have them taste it, and then I'll just be like, oh, before you go, do you want to have some water? And then they're like, oh yeah, sure. And then I have them drink it out like my copper cup. I have my own ritual with my water, and they always, like 10 out of 10, first sip, just like they look at it and they go, this water, it tastes so good. What's in it? I'm like, it's just water. And they're like, no, like, what do you do? So like, I've been trying to teach people some of like my practices with it. And, I have some of and this is again, another one of those components, but if you think about it energetically, it all lines up with everything we've been talking about. But I have a few different crystals that I have placed in a glass jar, a glass pitcher, you could say, that I've, done different work with in the moons and all that. I put it outside, let it charge in the sun. And then, so I've done experiments personally with this where that already changes the water. It changes the nature of the water. It changes the texture of the water. It becomes very revitalizing. But the wildest stuff is when I actually pray and speak to the water and evoke, the golden energy of healing and empowerment and love. And, just tell the water I love it, and all these different components where it tastes like a nectar. It becomes sweeter. It's the best adjective I've heard to describe it is it's silky. It has a weight to it. And even in that, where I used to drink like, 64 ounces a day, just random with how much I talk and all the other things I do for work. I'm just always drinking water. And I found that since I started doing this method, 3 or 4 cups completely revitalize and it's been, so I'm like, this is my thing where it's like, we're just getting into the power of intuiting and manifesting, creating, and really harnessing our power energetically to transmute different things of our lives.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I love it. I implore everyone to try it out. Just blow your own mind.
Yeah. And with Reconnective Healing, one of the experiments was affecting the pH of water, as well as imprinting psychic information in water, and people were able to pick up what the information was. It's statistically significant. So yeah, there's so much. And one of the things that you say the water was silky, that brings to mind about Dr. Gerald Pollack's 4th phase of water. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. Is that the vulcanization of water, that aspect?
It's basically what they call exclusion zone water or gel water. The only type of water that our bodies can actually process is gel water. It's like this, where the positive and negative ions kind of separate, and it creates like a different version of water. And fruits and vegetables have that type of water in them. So when we ingest those, it automatically is processed that way. But when we drink water, most of the quality water is pretty low, and when it comes out of the faucet. And so we need certain things to change it into this form of water. And infrared light is one of those things that can do it. There's certain, so like having it out in the sun, I mean, that's a good thing to do. The energy that we can interact with the water, I mean, water, it's alive in its own way, and we can affect it. So it makes me wonder, when you're saying silky water, it makes me wonder, maybe you're turning it into gel water that's much more usable by the body.
I'd love to get it tested, because there was this, I'm trying to remember the name, I can't remember the name of who I heard it from. It was a scientist and another kind of like mystic, but they were talking about like they would replicate water being essentially going through the process from a mountain down a waterfall. And that was the same type of aspect, where there was like, it changes the texture. They find that they only have to, and I think they call it vulcanization, but it sounds exactly like what you're talking about in this sense. But where they're amplifying the properties of water, and they found that you only had to, I think, use 10% of what you would for an entire crop, and it would grow more. So
Wow.
this is where we get into that fun realm of really being able to make the woo reality, of really harnessing this ability of the energetic components of our own creative forces to uplift everything, from the food, from what we really consume. And it starts to, now that I think about it, it really just comes back into a lot of different, like, ET experiences that people have talked about when they've had different encounters, where they talk about how they eat, how their food sources go. And it sounds really similar to a lot of this stuff, where it's like, essentially enhanced water, the nutrients in their food are amplified, so they don't eat as much. And it starts to blow my mind. I love it. And I think the biggest testament is just to go to show what's actually getting done to our food is, I mean, I have like 4 planters of strawberries, and they've been just fruiting just delicious fruits, and it just is so much different of a texture, of a flavor, of an aroma. It's just, everything has just changed. They're juicier, and it always kind of concerns me. It's like, what is going into our food?
Yeah. And is it just from the farming practice, or is it coming from the skies? Is it, the residual effect of pharmaceutical drugs in the water, or is it, being affected on, for some reason? And of course, things like fluoride, which are, it's very toxic. What effect does that have on the plants, and the food that we eat from those plants?
Well, and that's something that went under the radar of this whole lockdown situation, is that federal fluoride trial, where, it was revealed that the FDA and the USDA knew and were threatening scientists that, it passes the blood-brain barrier. It's another checkbox on the list of things that most people have been aware of, and just like the fetal development and how much it impacts it. So it's very curious. And, it was John Brennan, and I want to say this was like in 2016. It was one of his last like real big speeches before he had left his cabinet position. And he's talking about different technologies, and he's like, there's something that's really, we've been using it for a while, and I just absolutely love it, but atmospheric aerosol injections. That was another one, checking that off the box of everything in terms of the toxicity. So I think everything in terms of where this rabbit hole that we jumped into is, it just goes to show the importance even more than ever to recognize the odds are against us in a lot of ways, but we can really harness and take back our health and our power. But it starts from here first.
It does. It does.
And with that, thank you for tapping in, Christine. Any last words for the listeners?
Oh gosh, I think that it's really important that we focus on the moment. And I know that's a cliche, but on an energetic level and on a conscious level. And it goes beyond mindfulness in the usual way. I think it has to do with kind of being aware of the energetics of people, the energetics of nature, the energetics of the space, how our energetics are interacting with others. And so when you go into that sort of energetic version of mindfulness, it can it can illuminate a lot for us and help us with, choosing direction in our journey.
Ooh, ooh, I love it. I love it. And with that, thank you for listening. Be sure to tune in next week. Roll the outro.
That concludes this episode of Creatives Chat. Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Daily Time as creative minds get together and chat about who knows what. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thank you for joining us. Have a happy always.
I love it, Christine.
Yeah,
I
good
love
stuff.
it. I love it.
Great conversation.
Oh, I love it. No,
I have no idea
no
how
other
long
words
that
for
was,
it.
but I know my battery was going on my phone.